All right, good morning. It's great to be here. As Jan said, my name is Chip Huth, and I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm just, again, so blessed to be here to talk to you today about this. And I want to piggyback a little bit on what Johan has said and what Ann Christine has said. So I want to talk about this through my experience. And I'm not here to suggest to you that I have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I tend to think I have some really good questions. But we have learned some things, probably by doing it wrong, right? We know what doesn't work. And so from that, we have figured out some things that we've been very successful with. And I just want to share those with you for a little bit. A little background on me: I currently lead the Special Operations Division for the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. And the Special Operations Division is SWAT, Canine, Bomb and Arson, Mounted Patrol, which is our horses, and the helicopter unit. So huge budget, all specialists that report to me through a bureaucratical chain of command hierarchy that we're working on dissolving more of, right? And it's a really interesting job, fascinating people that I work with, big responsibilities, but we support patrol in every way. Most of my career before I became a leader at this level was spent leading SWAT teams on the ground, going through doors, actually operational, doing things. To that tune, I've planned and executed about 2,500 tactical operations in my career. The team that I was brought in to lead back in 2003, the end of 2003, 2004. At the time I was brought in to lead that team, it was the most complained on team in the entire department. And I was approached by a deputy chief who asked me to take that team over and turn it around. Now the previous boss, the previous supervisor, leader, had been fired from the department for excessive force, for beating someone up. So that gives you an idea of just how troubled the team was. That's the leader that got fired. So what does that mean about the rest of the team? So the deputy chief set me down and invited me in to help fix the problem. Now, if I'm honest with you, I had no idea how to fix the problem. But I said I could, because I wanted to be back in the SWAT team. But I had no clue, right? So I on board, I come into the team, and I think, how am I going to go about fixing this? What can I do? I don't know for sure how to do it, but I think in my mind, I've got this philosophy that I've developed over the years. I think in Greek they call it the via negativa, the negative life. The story goes that the Pope had asked Michelangelo, how did you create the statue of David? And Michelangelo replied, simple, I just removed everything that wasn't David. So the idea is that I can't tell you how to be a great leader or how to turn a team around, but I can tell you how to tank it, how to mess it up. So we just remove all those negative things, and what's left will hopefully be a good team. Simple, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So I come into the team, and I start noticing right away that there are some behaviors that are happening that I think are contributing to some of the problems that we're having. So we're getting a certain result, and the result wasn't good. We were kicking a lot of doors, and we were seizing some guns and drugs and making some big arrests, but creating a lot of complaints and a lot of collateral dissatisfaction. It causes a lot of attention to the team. When you don't have the community support, it's very difficult, especially in a vulnerable area, to do your job well. So I thought, okay, I'm going to look for some of these behaviors that we're doing, and I'm going to try to fix them. And when I fix these behaviors, I'm going to get a better result. That's my mind, right? So I start looking for what I call low-hanging fruit. Meaning I want to tackle some of the small problems first and get some early wins so I can build on that. And so immediately I recognize there's a huge area of tension that has been created on the part of the team in relation to the public. It's not difficult. We have a rule that says when we kick in a door and we serve a search warrant, we must leave a copy of the warrant and a receipt for anything we take, either with the resident or in plain sight where they can see it. Simple, right? That wasn't being done. The team members weren't leaving that required paperwork, and it was causing a lot of phone calls and a lot of complaints to our administrative staff. People would call in every day. The police came to my house, they kicked it in, they took my stuff. I don't know what to do next. I have no paperwork, I have nothing. So I thought to myself, okay, this is a behavior that we are engaged in that we want less of. I can address this directly with the team. Once I fix this, easy problem. So I call the team together and I say, here's what we're going to do. I said, currently we're not leaving a copy of the receipt and a copy of the search warrant with the resident in plain sight where they can see it. And they said, no, yeah, of course we're not doing that. They can't read anyway. Right? Or they would say, yeah, these guys are, these people are dirt bags. We're dealing with dirt bags. They don't, what does it matter? Right? And I said, listen, we have an obligation to do the right thing, independent of what anyone else does. The law requires us to do it. Policy requires us to do it. And I, as the leader, am telling you, we're going to do it. Any questions? They didn't have any questions. So I said, from now on, we're leaving a copy of that warrant in plain sight where the resident can see it. I walk out of the room, and I think, this leadership thing, it ain't that hard. Right? I can't even believe they're paying me so much for this. Then I start wondering what was wrong with the other guy. He couldn't figure this out. So sure enough, about a week, about 3 days goes by. At the time, to give you an idea, the cadence of our operations, the team was serving approximately 500 high-risk search warrants a year with a team of 14. So that's a lot of work, right? On top of some other taskings that we had around fugitives and career criminals. Busy team. A lot of 16-hour days sometimes. So we roll out on the very next warrant after I had this discussion. It was a father who had his son living with him, adult son, and the adult son was selling crack cocaine, and he had guns, firearms in his home illegally. And so we kick in the house, and you know what that looks like. Knocking the door down, flash bang, it's a big mess, but we get everything, everybody's corralled, the son's under arrest. The father, who, by the way, had been working 2 jobs to keep the house. So while he's gone working, son's selling drugs out the back door. We got the father sitting in the chair. Can I pick on you, Mutz? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to play act. And so I'm going, is that good? Will we play act? Mm-hmm. You just have to sit there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Don't get up. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to pretend like Mutz. Mm-hmm. Am I saying this right? Mutz he's the father, okay? He's sitting in this chair. He's the father. And so he's sitting in the chair, the warrant's done, and we're doing all the paperwork and all this stuff. And I'm watching my log officer. My log officer is the gentleman who's responsible for completing the warrant paperwork and the receipt. And he's standing over here, and he's by Motz, who's the father, and he's standing here and he's working on a clipboard. And he's not looking at Motz, he's working on a clipboard. I am standing back in the corner watching. What am I watching for? To see him leave a receipt, right? In plain sight where Motz can see it? Yeah, I'm checking for the behavior. And so he's completing it. He's not looking at Motz. He completes it, he looks over. And he walks out. Am I happy with this result? How would you feel if you were Motz in that situation? So I start getting this feeling in my chest, this tightness, and it goes up and I get red and my ears get hot, I'm angry, and I'm going to go find this officer and we're going to have a talk about this. As I'm walking out, thank you, I'm sorry. By the way, did that feel good?
Yes.
I think this is the wrong word for the thing you mean to say. You're so polite. Thank you, Buzz. So I'm going to go find him, right? And I'm going to have a word with him. It hits me, as I think it's hit some of you. As I'm walking out to find him, at the level of behavior, did he do everything I asked him to do? Did he leave a copy of the warrant in plain sight where Motz could see it? Yes. And I'm thinking to myself, this leadership thing ain't so easy. There's something missing here. There's something missing and there's something I can't just address the behavior alone, right? So back to what Johan was talking about. What is it? Well, behavior drives results. Is this true? You know, you get what you give, right? Whatever you put into something is what you're going to get out of it. It's like an equation, but it's an incomplete equation because it's missing a crucial element. It's missing the element of mindset. Mindset drives behavior. If we don't address the mindset, how I see others in regard to what I do, how I see myself in regard to the mission, if we can't address that, we're missing the boat. The idea is that I can engage in almost any behavior, either seeing you as a person who matters or seeing you as an object who doesn't matter. And the way I am in that behavior will make a difference in how you receive that behavior. People don't respond only to what we do, they respond to who we are being with them in what we do. This is a pretty important issue. But it's also an issue that's very difficult to discuss. Like we don't have a language that equips us to discuss it. It's easy to say, do this, don't do that. Everyone understands that. But to talk about how we see and the way we consider ourselves in relation to others and our mission and the organization, that's difficult to talk about. I didn't know how to talk about it at the time. I wasn't the only one having this problem. Matter of fact, I want to share with you, if you'll tolerate a video, I want to share with you a video of another officer who was on the west side of Kansas City. Just to give you an idea about this neighborhood, it's a neighborhood full of Hispanic citizens and undocumented workers. There was a train that came from Texas, so right on the border. The first stop the train made was in Kansas City behind a liquor store in this neighborhood. And a lot of undocumented workers would offload from the train. Most of them came to work. Some of them were criminals. And the criminals would mingle in amongst the day laborers and they would prey on them. When they came back from work with their cash, they'd rob them. When the citizens in the neighborhood would come down to the store to buy bread, the only store they could use to buy bread and milk was that liquor store. And they would hang out and they would harass them, harass the kids for the money or harass the women. A lot of arrests, a lot of crime, everything from homicides to petty robberies, everything. And this neighborhood, they had brought in my SWAT team, my former SWAT team when I was an officer, not a leader, to fix this problem. How do you think we fixed it? Zero tolerance. We came in and everything. If you stepped off the curb, you went to jail. If you drank a beer, you went to jail. If you spit on the sidewalk, you went to jail. Everybody went to jail. It was like fishing with a net instead of fishing with a spear. Do you think we probably caught up some really good people in that net? The neighborhood trying to work? Poor, hardworking people? You bet we did. Do you think that helped build relationships in the community? I remember one of my teammates coming to me and going, Chip, this was a teammate who was thinking. He says, Chip, do you realize that what you're doing isn't working? And I said, of course I realize it's not working, but we're the police. This is what we do. It reminds me of Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So we left. Like, we did what every SWAT team does when something doesn't work, we leave. So we left, and we left the job of policing this neighborhood to 2 officers. We've been working on this problem for years. This has been like a 40-year problem. SWAT teams couldn't fix it. Zero tolerance couldn't fix it. Now we've got 1 officer, and you're going to put a memo to him and say you've got 2 weeks because the mayor is tired of this. We're going to fix this? I mean, how would that feel to be in his position? I will tell you, Matt, he was on the verge of putting in a transfer to go back to homicide because it was easier. He was ready to give up. Just I want you to think about that. Just imagine what that would feel like to be him. He had tried the behaviors. The difference there was that shift in mindset. When Matt says, the minute I inputted into the equation the humanity of the people I was dealing with, things started to get drastically better. Now, they didn't become a team of people who were just soft on crime. They became hard on problems, but gentle with people. Separating the person from the problem. Really drilling down on the problem and becoming part of the community. This was critical. So this area now, it's amazing. You can walk down the streets. You don't have any of the issues. As Matt was saying, crime reduction, it's continued to fall. 2 officers policing this area are doing what SWAT teams couldn't do through zero tolerance enforcement because of a shift in mindset that allowed them to build trust. And I will tell you that Matt Tomaszek has retired recently from the department, and they brought another officer in who's working with Octavio, and the results continue because mindset shift is transformational. It doesn't rely on one charismatic leader. Once that mindset shifts and it becomes the way that we are, once it changes the culture of policing, you can plug in any officers who understand this, and they're able to continue with the results. So they did a really good job of illustrating and explaining mindset. But we didn't have on our team a language to discuss these things. It's easy to understand maybe through a story, but in order to teach these concepts to police, we have to be able to share these ideas so that they can be reproduced and people can ask questions. They can push back on the logic, right? They can wrestle with it. And we didn't have a language to do that. We didn't have a way of doing that. I was in an airport in Denver, Colorado. And has anyone been to the Denver airport in Colorado? Some people have. Yeah, big, right? Big airport. Lots happening. And I get on a layover because of wind shears we couldn't fly out. So I'm just waiting, and I wander into a bookstore. My degree is philosophy heavy. So I come across this book, Leadership and Self-Deception, from the Arbinger Institute. And the title grabbed me because I thought, leadership, I like that. And self-deception, that's interesting. I don't see how those two things really go together. So I picked the book up and I began reading it in the airport. By the time my plane landed back in Kansas City, I had finished the book in one read, one setting. And I was so excited after reading it. You want to know why I was excited? Because that book told me what was wrong with every single person in my life that didn't agree with me. Right? I went back and started prescribing the book to people. Like if you were in a meeting with me and you disagree with me, I'd just come up afterwards. Here you go. Let me just give you this book. Read this. This will fix you. Right? Did I miss the boat? Yeah, I missed the point. Well, it turns out that a good friend and co-author of mine had also read the book, Jack Colwell. Jack did not miss the boat. And he invited me to a class, a facilitation that the Arbinger Institute had put together using curriculum from these books to talk about these concepts. And I'm excited. I'm like, yes, I'm going to the class. Yes, I can't wait. This is a great book. I love this book. So I go to the class, and about halfway through, about lunch period on the first day, we're doing this workshop, and we're talking about frameworks. I'll share a couple with you. And we're talking about these things, and I'm like listening, and as it gets closer to lunch, I'm getting like less excited. And when I go to lunch, I'm very social, and I normally eat with people, and it's a good time to catch up. I eat by myself. And I'm just sitting there staring at my food, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're talking about me. Like I do those things. I'm self-deceived. And it hits me, I had destroyed 2 marriages at this time. 2 marriages to 2 completely different women. Charlene was short and blonde. Krista, my second wife, was tall and brown-haired. Charlene was really shy, like she wouldn't talk to the delivery person without me. And Krista could run a small country. Completely different women. And I destroyed these marriages. And it hits me as I'm sitting there eating. What was the common denominator in both those marriages? 20 years, and it just hits me. This book now, I hate this book now. Right? Tear it up. No. So I go back and I stick it out, and I finish the facilitation. I finish the workshop. And it changes so many things for me. Not all at once, but it gave me a foundation to start having conversations with the team. It helped me understand what happened with Mott's and the search warrant. It helped me understand it wasn't what the officer was doing, it was how the officer was with the person. And that I couldn't fix these issues through just behavior alone. We had to find a way, and I think this is the way this curriculum was the way to start introducing a language that we could discuss these things, and that's what we did. And I want to share with you a couple of frameworks, a couple of ideas that came from the Arbinger Institute that we embedded in our department, in our curriculum, in our training, that helped us a lot, became the foundation of our training. So in this framework here, we all know people that make things easier, right? People we work with, they're just easy to work around and they're helpful. I have them on my team, you have them on your teams. In any kind of a workspace, they exist. We tend to think that people like that, they work with others and they see others as mattering like they matter. So I'm alive to, if I'm thinking this way, the fact that you as a person have things you care about, things you need to do in your job, right? Things that really matter to you. And because I recognize that, and I recognize you as being, your objectives being just as important to you as mine are to me, I adjust what I do with respect to what you're trying to do. So I do my work in a way that helps you do your work easier. It's a simple concept, right? I adjust what I do with respect to what you do to help facilitate what you do. Now look, think about what Johan said about leadership. Think about what he said. We need to move away from the typical bureaucratic hierarchy and become facilitators of people, for people to do their jobs. This is what this is in leadership. We have to maintain some of the bureaucratic hierarchy for practical purposes. We have to have accountability and have people report, but we also need to push the decision making to the edges of the organization, to empower, as Johan said, empower our employees to make decisions. It's what my friend Chris Fussell calls a hybrid model. It's a hybrid model. It's a mix between the bureaucratic hierarchy and the empowered engagement. This facilitates that. This is the mindset that lays the groundwork for that. How I see myself. We call that the outward mindset. An outward meaning that I'm focused not only on only what I'm doing, I'm focused also on what others are trying to do. I'm focused outward. Now, we've all also worked with people that sometimes tend to make things harder. I used to be one of those people. I used to make things harder. When I came in the room, everybody was quiet. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When I left the room, they did what they wanted. I was only effective when I was around. And I was only effective in holding people accountable. I wasn't effective in helping them be accountable. Is there a difference? If I seek to hold you accountable, I rob you of your ability to do your best. As Johan said, I steal away from you your ability to do your best. I don't honor your agency. I'm not trying to hold people accountable in this outward mindset. I'm trying to facilitate them being accountable. In the inward mindset, I'm about holding them accountable because guess what? I know they have things they need to do. I know they have things that matter to them, but because I'm focused on myself exclusively, I don't see those things. In an inward mindset, I am exclusively focused on what I need. One of the metaphors we use at the Arbinger Institute is the metaphor of the box. In leadership and self-deception, we call this being in the box. And the box is a metaphor for the way I'm seeing the world when I'm inward. Imagine the walls of this box surrounding me and all of the information that's coming in. Information about the environment, information about the employees, information about the community. It's all filtered through the walls of this box. It's distorted. It's distorted in a way that helps me justify my inwardness. See, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. We interpret the world. And we call this the inward mindset. And we call it that because, again, we're focused exclusively on our own objectives. Now look, we know we have to focus on our objectives, but if we focus exclusively there, if we're head down in our work, we can't be alive to the impact of our work on others. Do you see this in the community with the policing? Do you see this trend? I'm head down in my work. I'm worried about going from the 911 call or the 211 call or the 111 call, whatever the emergency system would be for your agency. I'm head down in that work, and I'm worried about just from call to call to call doing what I can, and I can't be alive to the impact of what I'm doing on others. This was the critical difference between the way my team worked and the way Matt and Chato worked with the community on the west side. And we see the results. So outcomes, things that happen as a result of this. In an outward mindset, we tend to have more situational awareness. We're more aware of what's going on. In an inward mindset, we tend to be blind, not only to what others need, but also, and this is important, to dangers in the environment. You would think, by being inward and focusing on self, I would be more safe. But in reality, I'm less safe. And here's one of the big reasons. When I devalue your humanity, I automatically, unintentionally, and subconsciously devalue your adversarial potential. When I see you as less than me, something in my brain tells me that you're less of a threat. So I'm more likely to turn my back, I'm more likely to ignore danger signals that people leak out when I'm inward. It's so counterintuitive, but we found it to be true. Also, there's collaboration with the outward mindset. We can work together. Again, as Johan said and Christine said at the beginning, we have to partner together to be able to solve these problems. No one person is smart enough. No one leader is smart enough. No one has all the answers. As a matter of fact, I tend to think if I'm the smartest person at the table, I'm at the wrong table. Outward mindset invites collaboration. People want to collaborate when they feel valued. They want to do their best when they feel valued. In the inward mindset, we tend to have silos. Now, in a complex environment, silos are a bit of an illusion because no matter what you think, you're always impacting others with what you do. Even if you don't see it, even if you don't share information, even if everything is closed, you're always impacting others. You're just blind to it from an inward mindset. Accountability. We need more of that, right? The outward mindset invites accountability. The inward mindset invites blame. When I was at my worst as a leader, what I would say is, look, I would be a better leader if I had better troops. Like, how do you expect me to lead this bunch? We want to clear the table and re-deal. I need new troops. When I shifted to the outward mindset and I started, and I say shifted like I'm there, like permanently. Do you think I'm there permanently? Or do I have days? It's a struggle, it's a challenge, right? It's like a tug of war all the time. Something wanting to pull me more inward. Situations wanting to pull me more inward. Maybe a driver cuts me off. Maybe an employee's late to work. There's things that are always wanting to pull you inward. It's a struggle. You have to fight to stay there. But I will tell you that when I was inward, I was very much into blaming. When I became outward, I thought to myself, what does this employee's failure to do his or her job have to do with my obligation to do mine? Those are two different things, right? I can't blame the employee for that. There aren't bad teams or bad leaders. I'm not sending the message the right way. I had to own that. Helpfulness versus stuckness. And then, of course, engagement versus friction. As a leader, you could use those old hierarchical models, if you will. You could use them, and if you're a really good leader, you could probably get some things done. But it's like in physics. You can move through a medium, but you're creating unnecessary drag. You're creating unnecessary friction that doesn't need to be there when we hold tight to these old ways of doing things because they're comfortable, even if they aren't effective. Again, now, the speed and interconnectivity of the current operating environment, the complexity, the nonlinear escalation, all these things that happen because of our culture now, it makes those old ways of doing things nearly irrelevant. Come on in, please.
Thank you.
Welcome. It used to be that if you had a negative police action in a neighborhood, the impact was localized, right? The only people that knew about it were the people that talked about it in the neighborhood. Stories and that type of thing, right? Now, if you have a negative police action in a neighborhood, it's no longer localized. In one tweet, we can hear about it around the world. The terrorist incident that happened in Stockholm with the truck, I knew about it 5 minutes after the truck hit the store. In Kansas City, we're sitting around a table watching and talking about this incident and discussing within 10 minutes what we would do if it happened to us. When that happened in Stockholm, we altered our plan for our Memorial Day ceremony because we were going to have hundreds of officers standing on a street, and we brought in dump trucks full of sand and water to block off certain ingresses. Because of that happening. It used to be we never would have heard of that until we read it in the paper, maybe the next day. Maybe somebody you knew told a story. That's no longer the case. If I do something in Kansas City, it can impact what you do here, what you do anywhere you are in the world, in policing. So we need to shift, and we recognize that. There's another framework I want to share with you, kind of in closing. This framework I found to be very helpful. This framework we call, Arbinger calls the influence pyramid. And the idea is to spend more times helping things go right and less times dealing with things that have gone wrong. We tend to run around putting fires out a lot in leadership. I think that's true, but there's a never-ending cycle of that. It's like sticking your finger in a dike, it never stops if you're just reacting to problems. So this pyramid helped us understand some steps to get ahead of that curve. The first thing we work on here at the base of the pyramid is getting out of that box. This is where we start all the time, working on ourselves first. How am I seeing the situation? Am I appreciating all the different insights? Am I appreciating the person, the people that are involved in the situation and their perspectives? Am I outward? And that's where we start. From there we move up to building relationships. When I talk to police officers about this, it's funny often to see their faces. They think building relationships. They don't make any cop movies about building relationships. All the cop movies are about chasing and shootings and things like that, and we do some of that. But that isn't the bulk of our work, is it? The bulk of our work is right here, building relationships. But it's not sexy. It's not fun, right? It's a lot of work. Sometimes it doesn't go real well. There's no script for it. It's not always smooth. But this is the work. Because what do? We leverage those relationships to get our job done. We rely on the cooperation of the public to get our job done. Stockholm's a big city. I toured the police facilities yesterday, a couple of them, with my friend Nicholas. Fantastic leader, by the way. He's a mentor to me. I was amazed, right, at the professionalism of the police that I talked with. But if every citizen in Stockholm stood up tomorrow and said, I'm not going to obey the law, what could the police do about it? They'd be passive observers to chaos. There's nothing they could do about it. We rely on the cooperation of the public, and we get that through building relationships, not only with people, but people who have influence with those people. People have influence with those people. That's the key. And then we move up to listen and learn. How many people here think you're really good listeners? You didn't hear me? I tend to think I'm a good listener too, but as they say, you're your own worst critic. I tend to think for me, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, I'm often tempted to listen with the intent to respond, not the intent to understand. Like, maybe my wife has a problem and she comes home and she's telling me about it, and I'm thinking as I'm listening to her, boy, I hope you hurry up and get done with this, because I've got a great solution for you. Right? Like, this problem you've been worrying about all day, I'm going to fix it in like 5 minutes and we can get on to dinner. I wonder, how much does she appreciate that? Not as much as I think. She doesn't really want me to solve it. She wants me to listen to her. She's smart enough to solve it. She was solving things long before she met me. She wants me to listen. Listen with the intent to understand. Understanding is the emotional equivalent of air. If all of the air was suddenly sucked out of this room and this room became a vacuum, how interested would you be in what I'm saying right now? Even less? What would you be interested in? Getting air, right? Breathing. Now when the air is restored, we know a satisfied need no longer motivates. Then you'd be more likely to be influenced by the content of my message. Well, it's the same thing with understanding. When people feel understood, they're more likely to be influenced by what you have to say. It's a strict discipline, listening. with the intent to understand. But we know it's really important, and it's predicated on these other things below the pyramid. Finally, teaching and communicating comes next, and that's where I simply explain what I do and why I do it. The difference between throwing the warrant at Mats and saying, sir, this is a search warrant. It is a legal document that lets me come into your home without your permission. It's signed by a prosecutor and a judge. It's based on probable cause, which is a legal construct. And what I mean by that is, we have to have a reason to think you're doing crime before we can get this document. Do you have any questions about this document, sir? And sir, this is a receipt for what we're taking out of here. And it lists everything we're taking. Some of it you won't be getting back. For instance, beige, rock-like substance. That's crack cocaine, Mats. You won't be seeing that again, sir. And if there aren't any questions, we'll leave this with you. Is that a different feel than throwing it? Yeah. So I had one of my troops, when we started talking about this, they asked the question, Chip. They call me Chip back home. I can't get them to stop. They said, Chip, what would it be like to be policed by us? I said, how do you mean? Like I never thought of that. Well, what would it be like to be on the other side? What would it feel like to be on the other side of what we do? To be in a home and have your home kicked in and have the home searched and all these things. What would that feel like? I'd never thought of it. I had never thought of it. And from that, we started thinking about things we could do at the level of teaching and communicating to share with people what we're doing to help educate them so there was less friction. And then finally, correction. We do have to correct sometimes, but we want to spend the least amount of time there possible. We don't want to spend all our time there. There's some lessons from this pyramid. The first lesson, work bottom up. Again, most time and effort spent at the bottom of the pyramid. The second lesson, when we're stuck, go lower. If you're having a problem at one level of the pyramid, the solution is generally at a lower level. Quick story. The first time I learned this pyramid, the first time I learned it, I was sitting in an Arbinger facilitation. I learned the pyramid. I thought, this is really neat. And you know, like so many things you talk about in class, like in the abstract, it's like, this is cool. But then when you get to the street, I don't know how to apply this. Doesn't seem to, it doesn't make sense. I serve a search warrant 1 week after learning this. We have everything, all the chaos is over. We've got people handcuffed. I've got a gentleman standing here, like in front of this chair. It was a couch. He's standing here. I said, sir, I need you to sit down in the chair. And he looks at me and he says, no, I'm not sitting down in that chair. Now that's not what he said exactly, but out of respect for you and the environment, that's the intent. He says, no, I'm not sitting down in that chair. Now I'm a SWAT guy. All my gear, I got SWAT guys behind me. He's handcuffed. I'm bigger, I'm stronger. Can I set him in that chair? Yes, I'm physically capable of doing that. And my temptation was to do that, to correct. Do this, no, do this, now. But I had just learned the framework. So I thought, okay, look, I'm not in a hurry here. Everybody's cuffed, it's safe, I'm going to try this. And I remembered this lesson, when stuck, go lower. And so I come down, I'm at the correction level, correct? I'm right there. I said, well, I'm going to come down to teach and communicate. And I said, sir, let me tell you why I need you to sit down. We're going to be bringing gear in and out of here to process this, to search the scene. If you're standing up, everyone's going to want to stand up. You're going to be in the way. It's going to take us longer to get our gear in here. It's going to take us longer to search and process. We're going to all be here longer. And it would be helpful if you would sit down. What do you say to that? No. But with some other colorful language. Now I'm feeling that feeling again. You know the feeling? And I'm thinking, this isn't working. I'm going to jump up. I'm going to just get this over with, right? And of course, my guys are watching. And we had been to the training, and I thought, oh man, I gotta set an example here, right? I'm like, I gotta set an example. I'm going to stay with it. So what's the next level down? Listen and learn, right? Sir, why won't you sit down? He says, I'll tell you why. I was shot 3 weeks ago. I've got 7 pins in this knee. The doctor says if I bend my knee, the pins are going to pop out and I'm going to have to go to the hospital for a surgery. I ain't doing that for anybody. This light bulb goes on, right? Maybe 3 or 4. And I said, sir, if I grab that chair over there and I drag it over to you, it was actually a crate, but but I drag it over to you, will you put your legs straight and you can sit down that way? Yeah, I'll do that. We bring the chair over, we sit him down. I'm not going to go way into this out of respect for Nicholas's time. I want him to share. But just imagine, if you will, what could have happened if I would have shoved him down. Just imagine the collateral damage. I would have been justified. He didn't listen. But think about all the other problems that I could have inherited in regard to community perception, lawsuits. I know in the EU they don't have this same problem we do with lawsuits, but in America, suing people's kind of like a job. And there's a lot of it. And it's expensive to litigate, even if you don't lose. I would have inherited that. He would have told a story. His story would have been big and blown up about how the police beat him. It would have been bad for everybody. Just by following this framework, and it took me as long to tell you as it took me to do it. The 5 minutes saved us so much time. I never would have understood it without this. And finally, mindset matters most. It's always about working on myself first. It's always about staying in the lower level of the pyramids. Every day, I'm big into discipline. I'm a stoic, and I try hard to focus on myself. But it's so hard. If I don't focus on myself daily, I will slip into the inward mindset. It's almost like gravity. It's just pulling at me. The example I use, because I'm a farm boy, is gardening. What do you have to do to get weeds in your garden? Nothing. Nothing. It's the same thing with the inward mindset. If I do nothing, I will be pulled inward. I have to constantly weed the garden. I have to constantly look for signs that this is happening to me. And the last framework I'll leave you with is called SAM. This is a framework that we use every day to help practice. It's an acronym that I use. See others, recognize their personhood, adjust my efforts, and measure the impact of what I do. I write this on papers before I go into meetings, SAM, so that I can follow that in my mind. That's the foundation for my script. Regardless of the agenda, this is the foundation that it's built on. Am I seeing others? And then when I see them and I see what they're trying to accomplish, adjust what I'm doing with regard to that, and then measure impact. Check back in to make sure that what I did is actually working. And if it's not working, I can go back through the cycle again and start over again. Very important framework. Okay, well listen, I want to now turn this over to my colleague, Nicholas. Thank you for the gift of your time. I think we'll have questions at the end.